I always love having other Vegas fanatics on the podcast to chat about the latest happenings in Sin City. Back in spring of 2021, I was joined on the show by Adam Bauer, aka Travel Fanboy. We talked about some of the big changes that were going to be coming to Las Vegas, including the sale of the Cosmopolitan to MGM, the sale of the Mirage to Hard Rock, and the impending rebranding of Bally's to Horseshoe. A year has now passed, and all of those changes are either complete or underway. So I thought it might be fun to reconnect with Adam and share our thoughts on those various projects, as well as some of the upcoming openings and big events coming to the Vegas Strip. Please enjoy my conversation with Adam Bauer, aka Travel Fanboy. Well, my friend, welcome back. This is kind of becoming almost an annual thing for us to get together and share our thoughts and pontifications on Vegas.
That's right. There's probably a lot to think about now. It's going through quite a transformation last year or so, 2 years even.
Well, last year we kind of got together and we had this whole discussion about some of the big changes that were going to be coming to Vegas in the next year. And a lot of those changes are underway now, and things are in motion, or some of them have even realistically completed. And I thought it might be fun to get back together and talk about, share some thoughts now that we've both had a chance to get to Las Vegas since those changes have happened, and have a little conversation about, share some thoughts on some of these changes that have occurred, and then talk about some of the other stuff that's happening in Las Vegas as well. Cause you and I are both Vegas fanatics, and
for sure.
And it's fun to be able to share some of those thoughts. So some of the stuff we talked about last year, let's start off with the Cosmopolitan. When we had chatted last year, the sale had been announced, things were in swing. That is now that the sale to the MGM has been finalized. MGM has taken over. Most recent visit to Vegas, did you really notice any big changes at the Cosmo?
No major changes. Certainly not surface level changes. I think the one big thing that people are upset about is the drink ticket change. So now they do the red light, green light system on the video poker bars, where prior to they did the drink tickets. When drink tickets first launched at Cosmo, people were upset by it. They felt it was going to be a little bit limiting. Then they kind of took to it because they were spitting those tickets out fairly frequently if you were playing at a decent clip, and people found that you could combine these drink tickets for really, top shelf drinks, and it was actually a pretty good system. It was a very generous system, in my opinion, for the players. That's a good thing. And so it's interesting to see that when they first came out with this system, people were complaining. Now they're taking it away, people are complaining again. And I was just there, and I think employees are still getting kind of used to that specific change. I think every time I asked what the comp policy was, someone had a different answer. And that's true, not just of Cosmo. That's true pretty much anywhere that you go in Las Vegas. You're going to get different answers based on who you're asking at the particular time. But, that's kind of one big change in the community that I follow in Vegas that people notice. But I didn't find it really too limiting. They're still making good drinks there at Chandelier. It's a sexy bar. And, beyond that, I really didn't notice any changes. They still don't have that rollover yet where the players cards or the players clubs aren't, it's not MGM yet. They're still using identity. And right now there's no chance to, move points back and forth or kind of change that over. So actually when I was at Cosmo, I didn't even play with my card because I don't know when my next trip is going to be. And it just wasn't worth it to me to stand in line and get a new one. But Cosmo's still kicking, and I'm eager to see if MGM touches it at all. I mean, it's got a good formula going on there, so we'll see.
Yeah, much like yourself, in my last trip, kind of taking a look through and wandering through, other than a little bit of advertising here and there, really didn't notice any changes. And as you say, the staff still seems to be relatively happy with what's going on there and what's happening on the property. The big curiosity and the big thing, as you say, I think it's going to be interesting to see what they do with the rollover from identity to MGM rewards. How are they going to handle statuses? How are they going to handle free play? How are they going to handle points? I would imagine that they're going to figure out some sort of status matching and roll people over appropriately.
Yeah, and that's a finicky thing, right? Because you want to make sure that you're not upsetting, especially some of those big players that have been at Cosmo for a long time. To me, it's a welcome change because I'm fairly well entrenched in the MGM system, so I like the idea of maybe using points at Cosmo, or at least getting rewarded kind of a bit more efficiently for my time that I've spent at Cosmo, because I would spend a lot of time there in previous trips, but wasn't building up any comps or true value there in their program, because I was kind of spreading myself a little bit thin. So that's nice. But I think overall this was a smart move from MGM. It was a pricey transaction, but they've got, in my opinion, the rooms there have the best view in Vegas, and MGM's kind of stealing that view back from Cosmo and Black Rock, over the Bellagio fountains there. So I think it was really smart for them to kind of consolidate there. And I know we're going to talk about MG or Mirage in a little bit, and them consolidating those properties, Center Strip was, I think, pretty savvy on their part.
Anything you think you could do, anything you think MGM could do to make the Cosmo an even better property?
I don't know if they have to do anything right now. Like I said, I think for a lot of people, it's the sexiest, coolest casino on the strip. It's not the most luxury, and that's fine. They know exactly what they're doing and who they are. I think the big thing is going to be, and this is something that MGM has to really be concentrating on. I actually talked to my buddy Han about this recently, is especially for their top tier properties, making sure those rooms are in good working order. They're not getting dirty. They're not in disrepair, because you are starting to see that a little bit. Cosmos, it's getting older. I mean, it looks new on the casino floor, but those rooms are aging a bit, and so you started to see that a little bit at Bellagio. You started to see that a little bit at Aria, which again is now becoming, not geriatric, but an older property. Making sure that those rooms are up to date, they're still feeling fresh, because you want that experience from check in to casino to match what's going on in the rooms as well, especially when you got those really cool balconies too. You want anything to take away from that full on Cosmo experience.
That's a good point. I know when my wife and I stayed there back in December 2021, we wanted to do something really special. So we booked ourselves a spot at the Cosmo. And I mean, the Cosmo wrecked us for every other property in Las Vegas. I
Yeah.
mean, it was an amazing experience, even being there in the middle of December when you couldn't really spend any time outside sitting on the terrace.
Mm-hmm.
We still went out on the terrace and sat on the terrace and had a coffee and kind of took in the view and enjoyed that. But we did notice in our room a lot of things that were starting to just seem worn. I mean, bits of wallpaper here and there, and the odd
Mm-hmm.
stain on the carpet, and silly little things like the toilet that would run, the little flapper inside the
Right.
toilet tank that wasn't closed properly, so it would run, for 5 seconds every 20 minutes or half hour or whatever. These are little things, but when you're
Yeah.
spending the amount of money that people are spending to stay at the Cosmo, those are things that realistically should probably get fixed at some point in the near future.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I noticed that on my last trip to Bellagio too. I was in a halfway renovated room where the bathroom wasn't renovated, but the main living area was. And I was starting to see that with the bathroom too, where it was just things are getting kind of calcified, and the caulk is worn out. It's like, this is not a true Bellagio experience from start to finish, which I think is a luxury property you want to have. And I think you and I are in the same boat, where I'm less forgiving on a property that's more expensive. It's a higher tier level, and so we want to make sure that MGM, because we like these properties, that they're doing right by their customers and making sure, like I said, that experience carries through completely.
Speaking of changes with MGM, of course, the last time you and I had spoken, it was just very shortly after the announcement of Hard Rock buying up Mirage, which kind of came out of left field for a lot of people. I don't think
Mm-hmm.
that was one that was on people's minds when it came to Hard Rock. I think a lot of people actually thought the Cosmo was going to be the one that Hard Rock was going to pick up.
Mm-hmm.
That was a lot of the rumor flying around. That sale has now been finalized. The transition has begun. When I walked through the Mirage on my last trip, I didn't notice a ton of changes as
Mm-hmm.
of yet. And I think there was a lot of paranoia amongst real Vegas lovers and real Mirage lovers that the Hard Rock was going to come in and it was going to be boom, instant construction, instant changes. They're going to wreck the place. But I saw nothing of that.
Yeah, I mean, these are big ships you got to turn, right? And there's a lot that goes into land development in Las Vegas, and you don't want to rush it. I'm I'm very eager to see what they do with that casino and with the resort as it stands. I think it's a beautiful resort. There's facets of it that I don't want touched at all. Say like the that little atrium in there. It's just it's got that tropical, really cool, welcoming vibe to it. It's a very simple casino to walk around in, which I tend to enjoy as well. And yeah, you're right. There's really not much to say about changes that have happened, because beyond just changing MGM rewards to Unity at their Players Club, it's steady as she goes for now.
The Unity Rewards program is an interesting one to me. And I was kind of hoping that maybe being a new kid on the block, so to speak, in Las Vegas, they might do something to try to attract people in. I mean, I'm a super low roller when it comes to any of these properties, right? And any of these, whether it's MGM or Caesars, but I still have the odd comps showing up in my account. And
Mm-hmm.
even with MGM rewards, I mean, I don't gamble hardly at all at any of the MGM properties, but I'm still picking up the odd couple of comp nights here or there. And when I stayed at the Mirage back in July, the 2 nights that I was there were both comp nights. I created a Unity account. I signed in, nothing. These
Yeah.
rooms are being peaked out at $100 and something a night for like a basic king room. I don't know how I feel about that.
Yeah, I feel like, as they do that transition too, as we were just talking about with MGM and Cosmo, I think that full transition it's going to take some time. They are right now, I know, tier matching. So if you have status with MGM or really any of the local properties in Las Vegas, they will tier match you to a relative or what they feel is an equal tier within Unity Reward. So for example, I have MGM Gold. They matched me to their icon status, which is their second highest status. And on top of that, they gave me $100 in resort credit. I ended up not using it. I just naturally wasn't down in that area of the strip anymore. It's a great offer though. I've seen people use it. They've gone to a steakhouse, they've gotten some cocktails, what have you. So I think they're kind of testing the appetite right now for it and what it's going to be. But yeah, I don't know when the idea of kind of comps and the redemptions and that aspect is really going to kind of come to fruition, if you will. Because I don't even know. Like I said, I imagine the actual resort is going to stay the same as it is now, the Mirage and all those rooms, and they're just going to add the Guitar Hotel, or are they going to? I have no idea. Are they going to tear some of that stuff down? Or are they going to renovate? I'm not sure. So, like I said, it's confusing and exciting all at the same time.
My understanding was that they were going to be doing some pretty serious renovations inside the casino. And one of the things that I had heard about, and I've noticed this too, is, and my complaint in there is the ceilings are so low. But from my understanding is part of the reason the ceilings are so low is from the old school security days, and the guys were on the little trolleys and the catwalks
Mm-hmm.
crawling around. Those catwalks are still up there, and they basically just dropped the ceiling or built the ceiling at that level to essentially build a ceiling.
Yeah.
And there's, my understanding is there's going to be a lot of work done inside the casino, which would be great. I would love to see them grab all that rock and roll memorabilia that used to be at the old
Yeah.
Hard Rock that's now Virgin, and put a lot of that inside the casino, because to me that was always one of the fun parts about going to the Hard Rock property, was seeing all that cool stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's an interesting idea. And to me, what's compelling is their program is called Unity, but they don't have a lot of Unity within their properties. I just mean like design wise. That's why I have no idea what it's going to look like. Right? They've got a casino in Tulsa. They've got a casino in Indiana that they just purchased, and really some of them, which they've labeled Hard Rock, tend to look the same and have the same vibe. I like the Hard Rock in Atlantic City. I think it's kind of cool. It really kind of leans into that rock and roll atmosphere. But then others are not like that at all, at least from what the Seminole tribes are running. So I'm going to be interested to see how it shakes out. I mean, I feel like they're going to lean into it a bit, especially if they're building a guitar hotel. But who knows? We'll see how far they take things.
Let's talk about the Guitar Hotel, because there are a lot of people that are very upset that the Mirage Volcano is going away. And I mean, for me, I get it. I understand the emotional attachment to things that are sort of iconic Las Vegas, but I also think a giant hotel guitar or guitar shaped hotel tower on the strip could look really freaking cool.
I mean, that's it, right? I think a guitar hotel is like peak Vegas. If you want like almost kitschy, ostentatious, ridiculous design, like yeah, a giant guitar hotel kind of fits the bill, if you will. Yeah, and I get, it's a Wynn property. It really kind of set off kind of some new staging Las Vegas of, hey, here's what we can do, and here's how we can make people feel. You've got this free attraction, the Dolphin Show, and there was really something to that. And I think a lot of people are holding on to that, but there have been some changes in Vegas that have really worked well. And I'm like I said, I'm excited for this one. I'm not attached to the volcano show. I can't remember the last time I made an actual purpose to go down and visit it. So I welcome our new guitar hotel on this trip.
I think it's going to look fantastic. It's going to look really cool. I mean, they're talking, and we're going to talk about F1 a little bit later on here as well. But I mean, how cool is that going to look with cars streaming by
Yeah.
at 350 kilometers an hour, ripping past a giant guitar-shaped hotel? I think it's going to look really freaking cool on TV. But again, there's just a lot of people that are really, really attached to that volcano, and I don't know. I'd be curious to see how that shakes out.
Yeah, I didn't sign the petition, but Godspeed to everyone that's looking to make that a thing. I don't think the Seminoles are listening to you right now.
I always like to say I believe that there are people way smarter than I am, making way more money than me, making these decisions, and they know what they're doing.
Yeah, I think that's true. Hotel design is not my thing, and I think I think they figured it out. They've got a couple other guitar hotels, and I think they think it works. So
well, and that's the thing is I wonder too, a lot of it, you mentioned the other guitar hotels. I wonder how many people have actually seen photos or anything of these other guitar hotels, because they do look really cool.
They're pretty neat. Yeah, they are neat looking.
One of the things that had just occurred as well the last time you and I had chatted was Caesars announced they were making a more of just a name change, an aesthetic change to Bally's. It was going to be changing over to Horseshoe. That transition is underway, and interior wise, I think is basically complete. Exterior, they finally got the giant horseshoe sign up on the side of the building. The marquee is still going up. Did you have a chance to take a wander through and take a bit of a look?
I did, yeah. It definitely seemed like it freshened it up a bit. I think the room still needs some love. They've got some cool rooms. They have some very affordable, kind of fun suites in there. So I think that would be a nice next step. But I think the brand as a horseshoe makes sense to be in the Las Vegas Strip. I think the Bally's name and everything that's going on with like the Bally's acquisitions and Tropicana, and like just it became a mess. And so I think rebranding it as Horseshoe makes it a lot cleaner of a brand. It's a gambling brand, especially with them bringing the World Series of Poker in there as well. And Bally's, sorry, I'm referring to Bally's Horseshoe, but Bally's before was always to me kind of a neat little casino. It had multiple levels to it. It kind of similar to kind of old Caesars, that old Caesars pit where you kind of walk in, and I kind of like that. They do have some cool features. Their main casino bar is really cool. So I think it's overall a good thing. And it was, I think, if you asked me to pick out one hotel in the Strip that needed a power wash the most, it was going to be Bally. So good on them for getting that done and getting the paint up.
I know that they've just done, or they had just done recently, some big refreshes on the rooms and had done a lot of renovations and updates in the rooms in I think the resort tower, the Jubilee Tower is still in need of some, as you say, a little bit of TLC, but the casino itself, even prior to the Bally's, and I'm calling it Bally's, the change over to Horseshoe, they had done a lot of work in there already, as far as that new bar, as you mentioned, that main casino bar, kind of right as you come in the front door. That had just gotten a big refresh and a big redo, and they had done a bunch of a fresh coat of paint on the whole place. But you and I continuing to call it Bally's brings up an interesting point. Are people even going to notice? I mean, I know from working in the radio world, I remember a radio station I worked for, we changed names. We went from the radio station at Edmonton, went from K97 to K-Rock, back to K97, and there were listeners who didn't notice that it was K-Rock, and it was K-Rock for like 10 years in the middle.
Yeah.
So I wonder if the same thing is going to happen with this whole Bally's Horseshoe thing, where again, you and I, just out of habit, we're calling it Bally's. Are people even going to notice it's changed over to something different?
I doubt the casual visitor is going to notice or even care, right? And I didn't care that much. I don't think as many people are attached to the Bally's name as they are to the Mirage volcano. So I think it's a nice, clean change. Like I said, I think it matches up really well with the World Series of Poker being held there now. So I think give it a couple years and no one's going to confuse it too much anymore. And I think to me, Bally's died when they removed that really cool entrance right off the Strip there with the circular, the horseshoe entrance they almost had when they were going in with the neon.
It's interesting you mentioned that. I just saw a picture of that today. Somebody had posted on a one of the Vintage Vegas Facebook groups that I was in, and it was the moving sidewalk through
Yeah.
the horseshoe up to where the escalator is now that goes up
Hmm.
and across into the main casino. And yeah, that was all gardens in the front and
It was
fountains
so
and everything.
cool.
It looked so cool. And now it's all shops and all that stuff. And now even more shops
Hmm.
with the two different, there's a live music venue, and then the is it Luke Bryant that's opening the big restaurant bar or
I
something
think
that's
it's
right
Blake Shelton if we're
like
testing my current country music star trivia. Yeah,
they all sound the same to me.
that's right.
They all sing songs about trucks and horses.
There you
So
go.
I'm gonna upset some country music fans with that one.
No, they know that they
They,
know.
they know what we're talking
Mhm.
about. Let's talk a little bit about some different stuff and some new stuff that is going to be happening in Vegas. And I wanted to talk specifically about the impact of sports and some of
Mhm.
these big events that are happening in Las Vegas. We've got Formula One coming in November 2023, so less than a year away. Super Bowl, which is approximately a year away. They've started the countdown on that. What do you think the effect of an event like, let's start with Formula One, for example, is going to have on the city of Las Vegas? I mean, they're talking about a billion plus in revenue coming in just out of this one weekend event. What do you think this is going to do to the city?
Yeah, I mean, I think that number's pretty accurate. It might even be higher than that. I have a relative who works in hospitality in Arizona, and they said the Super Bowl that just did gangbusters for them. You couldn't rent a car, you couldn't get a hotel room. They're happy that everybody left. And so, on that note, I think the locals are going to be a little bit peeved, and some of them really are. I was talking to a few on this past trip who are I think they're worried about very practical concerns just for their day to day, especially if they're working in the industry, they're trying to get to work on the strip, or God forbid if they work on the west side of town, but they've got to get across Las Vegas Boulevard to the east side of town somewhere, it's going to be nearly impossible. But there's some really interesting things that a few people brought up, which is the greenery on the Las Vegas Boulevard, which they're going to have to pull up. For this track to come in, namely the palm trees. And a lot of them were worried about what that's going to do just visually to Las Vegas, the impact that it's going to have. They don't want to see some of these like kind of beautiful sightlines go. But in terms of economic impact, I think it's great for the city. I think it makes it a brand new, different type of entertainment hub. It had always had the shows. It was kind of they had some Broadway light shows. They had some kind of risque shows, comedy, all you name it, but they're bringing in a different type of entertainment, which is, I think, giving more people an excuse to go to Las Vegas. You don't need a reason; you only need an excuse, right? But it's also really appeasing some of the locals for some of the sporting events that are local, right? The Raiders and the Golden Knights, which the locals have really taken to. They haven't had a major sports team before, and so it's really cool for them, and it's really great to see them, like I said, rally around that as well. So it's a pretty dynamic thing. I think F1 is going to be the most disruptive for everything they have to do, but there's still going to be some challenges with the Super Bowl. A lot of people, locals, are worried about parking and just what that's going to do to the area. So that'll be really compelling to watch, especially Formula One. I know you and I are both fans of that.
As you say, I think F1 has got the potential to be definitely the most disruptive to the city. I mean, you're looking at a very large portion, excuse me, a very large portion of one of the most famous streets in the world being closed for a several
Mm-hmm.
mile stretch.
Yeah.
And I hadn't really thought about the greenery per se, because I know the big spot that a lot of people were concerned about was the spot in front of the Bellagio fountains, because they're
Right. Right.
building a very large grandstand that's going to go there with hospitality suites and everything that's going to go in that spot. And I know initially when that was first announced, and everyone said, well, what about the trees? And I thought, well, I mean, I guess they could build around the trees and work around the trees to build that grandstand. But on this most recent trip, I took a walk along there. I went, there's no way they're building around these trees.
No.
They are
Yeah.
taking all these trees down, which
Mm-hmm.
would be a real shame, because that area, when you walk along that area in front of the Bellagio fountains, it's kind of nice to have the shade from the trees over the sidewalk.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to be very curious to see how that all shakes out. And a lot of people too, for some of the people and the discussion that's come out of it is people have said, oh, it's only a weekend. It's only going to cause disruption for a weekend. They got to look at some of these other cities where these street courses are held. I mean, they've got to go. They have to smooth out the entire track and the entire track route. They have to get that ground down and repaved to the perfectly flat. The few days, or I guess the week before, they have to go down and weld down all the manhole covers, because if car goes over the manhole covers, it will suck it right up out of the street. And you can't have that flying up into the crowd. That's going to cause a problem. It's going to be a very disruptive time. So I mean, to that end, I'm looking at my calendar going, there is no way I'm going anywhere near the city of Las Vegas from about the middle of October until probably end to beginning of December. End of November, beginning of December, I think.
Yeah, and I mean, like once that track is built and ready for race conditions, they're not opening it back up to traffic. These are, like I said, it's not even just a weekend, right? Where you think of like the Super Bowl, it's an enclosed space and it's one day. I mean, they have multiple events. You know, even if you're just talking only the Formula One specific race, you've got Thursday, Friday practices, Saturday qualifying, and then Sunday the race. But you have also multiple events that are going on. Different. What do I want to call them? Not circuits, but different types of races that are going on throughout that 4 or 5 day stretch there. So it's it's going to be quite disruptive there. And I will not go the first time, that's for sure. One, because we have a baby due, and I don't think leaving my wife with 2 kids is going to earn me any points. But also, it's just going to be a mess there. It's going to be a fantastic mess. I think it's going to be the most compelling track on the circuit visually. I think Singapore is a really cool looking track as well, with the background of Singapore there. But it's going to be a sight to behold in more ways than one.
I have tossed around the words shit show and clusterfuck.
I was trying to be polite, but yeah,
to describe it. And I've had so many friends that have said, "Are you going to go?" Hell to the no. There's, I mean, not a hope, in hell.
I went to the one in Austin this year, or this past year in 2022 in October, and that's way out in the boonies, right? Well away from the city limits, and just the sea of people that were there. And I remember seeing, I'm like, I cannot imagine even a quarter of this many people trying to get around the Las Vegas Strip. No matter, you're not even talking about, actual traffic. I'm just thinking foot traffic of getting around. Granted, they can all kind of go back into their hotels, but still, I mean, it's going to be a jam-packed weekend. And I know room rates are already expected to be just completely off the board.
And again, speaking to sports, I mean, events with Super Bowl, for example, which again, you were mentioning what it just did in Phoenix and how well the city received it. But of course, as you say, everybody was more than happy to see everyone leave. Do you think events, something like the Super Bowl and Formula One, do you think that'll chase people out of the city to a certain degree?
Well, I think what's going to happen is people who maybe would have otherwise gone that weekend just aren't going to go. But I think for spectacles like this, listen, however you want to feel about this, there's more than enough people out there with the money to go those weekends who want to go. And so it's going to be jam packed. So I think it's going to be people like you and me who might otherwise be fans of that, but don't want to spend 10 grand on a room, who are going to end up staying home. But to me, there's no other city in the country that's more relevant to host a Super Bowl and its accompanying post parties afterwards. I'm sure the winning team of next year's Super Bowl is going to have an absolute blast, with the exception of the MVP, who might have to skirt off to Disneyland really quick. But other than that, I think the winning teams can be well received in Las Vegas next year. That's for sure.
It's an interesting thought to look at as these events are growing and as big events are starting to show up in Las Vegas, sports and otherwise. I question whether or not these events, and this is purely from a selfish side of things, are they starting to kill things for the low rollers like you and I? I mean, I used to do 7-8 trips a year to Vegas, and now I'm looking at it going, I can't do that many because these events are driving up the room rates.
Right. I mean, and it's good for Vegas, but you're right. I mean, and you got, before it was just, all right, make sure you're not in town for C2E and World of Concrete, right? Those big conventions that are going on. But other than that, you're like, yeah, you'll be okay. But you're right. Like, what major event is happening? What major concert is going on? Or, and sometimes it happens too. We're like, why are roommates in the North End of the Strip so crazy right now? It's like, oh, there's a convention. Why are roommates around Park MGM nuts? Like, oh, George Strait is playing, at T-Mobile, right? And so you gotta kind of navigate that now. But as these massive events start coming in, yeah, it's going to be a challenge. And you're right, low rollers are really taking the hit right now, and what's good for one might be difficult for the other. Overall, I think it's a boon for the city. I like the people who work there, and they deserve a lot of the experiences that they're getting, and the increase in jobs and a bustling economy. But yeah, it does make it challenging as a visitor, that's for sure.
As I say, it's purely for selfish reasons because
Mm-hmm.
again, like you, I love the people that work there and the people that live there, and I have a lot of friends that are there, and I'm happy to see things, especially after 2 years of COVID and shutdowns
Sure.
and decreased tourism. It makes me happy to see, traveler numbers are back up, getting approaching
Mm-hmm.
that 40 million a year mark again, and the casinos are pulling in $1 billion a month or whatever the hell it is of money that they're bringing in from their customers. I think
Right.
that's great. But at the same time, for a guy like me who loves his comp rooms or loves his $30 a night rooms,
Yeah.
um, it's those are getting few and far between and are getting a lot harder to find. And it's kind of frustrating.
It is. And one thing that I noticed, and we didn't really plan on talking about this too much, but I think there are some properties that are really struggling to figure out what are we doing here? What are we offering? What should our table limits be? And to me, it's really a lot of the mid-tier and even kind of upper lower tier properties that are really struggling to figure out what can we offer, what's going to get people in the door. I think, the Wynn, Bellagio, Aria, Cosmo, not much has changed for them in terms of who they think their consumer base is, what table minimums are going to charge. But I do see some struggling where for instance, I walked into Flamingo at 10 a.m. on a Friday morning and they were offering $25 craps with nobody playing. And to me, I'm like, guys, this isn't you. I appreciate the effort. Vegas is back, so to speak, but this is going to be empty all day. Maybe you'll get one or two at the night. And, I take a 15-minute walk to Cosmo and they're still offering 15 at that same time. So, yeah, I think as much as we struggle to figure out, okay, what does Vegas look like for me? I think some of these properties are still trying to figure out what are we doing here? What are we offering? Our customers. Are we pricing things appropriate? And they're really trying to figure out where they can go right now because everything's moved up. It's just about how far up can some of these lower tier properties take advantage of, if you will.
And that's a fair point too. And I think the pricing things right is a good point as well. And to a degree, it kind of leads into that whole discussion about that a lot of people have had about nickel and diming in Las Vegas and how far can they push it
Yeah.
in the current economy with where everybody keeps saying we're on the precipice of a recession and things could go badly again and interest rates are going up and all the fear tactics. Vegas isn't seeing any real effect of that yet. They're still, again, visitorship is up and
Mm-hmm.
spends are up and room rates are up and all these things. But how far can Vegas really push people before they start to push back?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that's what everyone's trying to figure out right now, right? And I think a lot of people are still getting back into the swing of things. Really, they've got some still, I hate this phrase, pent up demand, if you will, but I think people are still eager to get out, especially with kind of the work from home economy taking hold. People are more eager to go work somewhere else, right? And so people work from Vegas. People are, like I said, just more willing to take some of these trips and this may seem a bit unfair or not, but Vegas and big corporations are paying more for things as well. So inflation hasn't ignored them, or they're not feeling the effects of that. Now, whether or not it's fair to say that their margin should always be the same, should they give a little bit back to the customers? That's probably an argument for a different day. And to some extent, I would say that yeah, there's some of these places, Flamingo, namely, possibly Excalibur, from what I noticed, that really need to kind of rein it in a little bit. Like, hey, you're getting out over your skis a bit. I don't think you realize who your customers are, because I saw some quite empty tables for some quite high prices. But yeah, I think things will kind of shake out, as they tend to do. But we'll see.
Yeah, I don't feel like people are going to Flamingo for $25 tables.
It was the weirdest. So I was playing on a shoot to win craps machine. I put this on Twitter, actually. That's one of those digital craps tables. I throw actual dice, but you've got like a little screen in front of you and everything's computerized. There's just one stick man that's kind of overseeing everything. And live table next to me really wasn't live. They had dealers there, but no one was playing. It was 25. And he kept trying to get me to play it. I go, listen, you make it 15, I'll play it, because that's what the digital table was. It was the digital table was full. And he refused essentially. I said, hey, listen, man, like, I'm just not going to do it. That's not going to bring me that much more value to play at that table. Like, this is just a gimmick. I'm having fun. I'm not going to be here that long. But yeah, it's I imagine that the table was empty for a long time, as I said, because I walked to Bellagio soon after that, Cosmo soon after that. Bellagio was 25. Why am I going to play at Flamingo at 25 when I could sit in beautiful Bellagio and play for 25? Unless I'm
Mhm.
really entrenched in Caesars and I need to earn those points. But I mean, come on.
Yeah, nobody needs the points that badly.
No, seriously.
Let's get into the fun part of the discussion. Not that the previous parts haven't been
Sure.
fun, but let's get into the some of the predictions. These are always a little fun, doing some pontificating and predicting on the future of Vegas. Let's start with a project that has been in the works for a very long time, very, very long time, probably setting a record for the longest time it's ever taken to complete a hotel.
It's going to be the oldest, newest hotel ever, I think.
Exactly. It's been sat as an eyesore at the north end of the Vegas Strip for a very long time, with the exception of the last couple of years when we've finally seen some movement. I'm talking about the Fontainebleau. 2023 is supposed to be the year of the Fontainebleau. Will it be?
All signs are pointing to yes. I will be beautifully wrong in this prediction that I made last year that said I didn't think in any way, shape, or form it was going to be ready. But it seems like all signs point to yes on this one, despite what I thought was going to be probably some serious work they had to do to get it ready, not just from a design perspective, but just getting what was a lifeless, deteriorating building as I saw it. Maybe it wasn't as bad as I imagined it was, but bringing that back to life. And I think as we talk about what Vegas is now, how the pricing is, it could be opening at a perfect time for itself. If visitors are still coming, if Vegas is still comfortable offering kind of higher prices, higher room rates, because that's going to be a luxury hotel. You're not going to have a hotel that big. And with that, it's kind of manifesting itself in a way that kind of screams luxury. So it's going to be a really cool thing to see. One, if it is built, because it's going to continue to breathe life into the north end of the Strip, which has been lacking for a long time. But with Wynn over there, the Palazzo Venetian, I'm kind of stretching a bit, but with Resorts World as well, which I have come to really enjoy, that I think it's going to move a lot of visitors to the north if they've got the money for it.
I am still in the I'll believe it when I see it camp.
Sure.
Just based on so many things that have happened with that property. I mean, that property has certainly, I mean, it seems snake bit from the start. I mean, it got hit with recession, and then it got hit with COVID, and then it's been sold and bought and moved around and refinanced, and billions of dollars poured into financing for it, and with interest rates going through the roof. And again, just on the precipice of a recession, as they keep telling everybody. I mean, again, like Vegas doesn't seem to have felt that, and it's got a lot of that pent up demand, and people are still traveling. But will that pent up demand be exhausted by the end of 2023 when this property is supposed to be opening? It's just, again, I'm still in the I'll believe it when I see it camp, just based on how long it has taken for this property to get to this stage. And like yourself, I looked at it and went, there's no way that this thing can still be structurally good after sitting for that length of time and not having any work done on it. I mean, I guess they must have been inspecting it and keeping an eye on it to a certain degree while it was sitting.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point, and that's something that I'm completely ignorant to, and I probably wasn't thinking about. I mean, someone had physically owned that property, so it would make sense that would be the case. But you're right. I mean, I think it's gonna be 13 years old when it opens, and like I said, man, if they could get that thing ready for Formula One, they would be opening with a bang. I don't know if that's the timeline that they're working with, but all the renderings I see make it, like I said, look very nice, and the North Strip is coming back in a big way if that thing can get open in a timely manner, because there's a lot of good things happening over there.
And somebody had recently shared a video, I think it was on TikTok that I saw it, of lights on inside the property. So
these weren't just guys with hard hats and
could be
their lens on top.
Could very well have been. I don't know, but I mean, it was very interesting to see it with lights on and see an actual, strip of lights in the actual main part of the hotel tower. And the
Right.
renderings look fantastic. And it looks like it's going to be a beautiful property. And I mean, being that close to the convention center
Mm-hmm.
and as you say, being able to reinvigorate that end of the strip, because really for the longest time, and even still to a certain degree, there's a big gap in that end of the strip, like to the point where people are of the opinion, and I'm kind of teetering on the opinion of places like the Strat and Circus and the Sahara aren't on the strip in my,
Right.
you know what I mean?
It's
Like
a
they
fair
are,
assessment. Yeah.
but they're not anymore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, if you think of that physical area, I mean, for a while, it's just Wynn and Circus, if you want to just talk that very close vicinity there. So having Resorts World newly built, getting Fontainebleau in there, it's also going to benefit Sahara, I think, as well. Maybe not so much the Strat, that it's not that much further from Sahara, it's across the street. It just feels like a long way. But I think all those properties will continue to benefit from that development.
Let's talk about the MSG Sphere. This is a very interesting project that people seem to mistake quite often for the rumored Moon Resort that
Yeah, right.
that's been floating around for a long time. And every time an article about that pops up, people are like, no, I've seen it. They're building it. No,
Yeah, no.
you haven't seen it. This is going to be an incredible an amazing live performance venue that we just found out in the Super Bowl, that U2 is going to be
Mm-hmm.
doing a residency at the Sphere. And I mean, U2 seems like kind of an odd choice in that how relevant are they currently, but at the same time, I know, having seen U2 perform and knowing what they do with
Mm-hmm.
technology and what they put into the technology end of their shows,
Right.
it's going to be an absolutely amazing facility for them. It's scheduled for a 2023 opening as well. October is what they're saying, which would make great sense because the Sphere is going to serve as the general admission area
Mm-hmm.
for the Formula One race. The track is going to curl around the Sphere. It's going to be really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Thoughts on the Sphere? Is this going to be a successful project for Vegas?
It's so unique and kind of goofy enough that it seems like it will. I do wonder if we get a point of just oversaturation of live music venues. I mean, you have virtually every large resort on the strip, every 3 to 4 tier property above has their own live music venue, bringing big names. I mean, even just Park MGM has Bruno Mars, playing multiple nights a week. They'll bring in Lady Gaga as well. So I'm I keep saying this. I'm interested to see what happens. I don't want anything to fail. That's why I keep using that phrase. I'm eager to see what's going to happen. Um, I don't know who they could bring in on a consistent basis that's going to continue to use it. Like, I'm going to take your word that U2 does some compelling things with their shows. I've never seen them. I was forced to listen to them like 10 years ago because I had an iPhone. And that's kind of, beyond that, I don't have too much of a background of U2 music. I mean, I know their hits and stuff, but yeah, I mean, that's a space that deserves an artist to come in there and really do something compelling and creative with their work. There's probably a handful in the artists in the world that I know of that would probably be up to that task, but the others just kind of want to get on stage, perform, get their yearly nut, and then get out of there. So it's yeah, that's one. I think you have more background in kind of the music world than I do to kind of harp on this a bit.
Well, it's interesting that you bring up the idea of saturating the market with live music venues, and there's a really interesting um, contrast between the different types of venues that are opening up. You mentioned the Park MGM and the Dolby Theater. I mean, that's a
Mm-hmm.
smaller, quote unquote, smaller venue. It's
Sure.
a couple of thousand people. The Sphere is a big venue. This is
Mm-hmm.
my understanding. It's 15, 16,000, I
That's
think.
standard
Like
stadium. Yeah, good point.
it's a big venue. Can Vegas continue to support large venues like that? So
Mm-hmm.
you've got the Sphere, you've got T-Mobile that's 18,000 people, you've got Allegiant that's 60,000 people,
Mm-hmm.
you've got MGM Grand Garden, which is 10 or 12, I
I
think.
think it's around there. Yeah.
You've got the whatever it's called, I think the Michelob Ultra at Mandalay Bay now. It used to
Mm-hmm.
be the Mandalay Bay Event Center. That's, I think, up around 10,000. I mean, you've got some large venues, and then throw in all the smaller ones like
Yeah.
Park MGM and Dolby, and Zappos at Planet Hollywood,
Yeah.
and
Caesars and Resorts World has them. Yeah.
Forum and Resorts World, and all these different places. I mean, you there's only so many dollars in the world.
I think you and I are going to perform somewhere at some point. They need to fill those spaces.
Exactly. Like I feel like I'm gonna have a residency in Vegas at some
Yeah.
point. Like it's getting to that point. So yeah, like I'm really curious to see how they manage to fill it on a regular basis.
Mm-hmm.
And the other, knowing the way the music promotion world works, there's not that many large promoters either. I mean, Live
Mm.
Nation is kind of the biggest one that does all the big shows like that, and the big venues like that. Is it going to get to a point where a venue turns around and says to the promoter, like Live Nation, you can only come to us. You can only come to MSG Sphere. We
Mm.
don't want you putting events in T-Mobile Arena.
Mm.
Where does that then leave T-Mobile Arena?
Right.
Trying to promote their own events. You know what I mean? I really do wonder about the oversaturation. And then again, if we're getting into building a basketball arena, whether it's on the north end or the south end of the strip, or building a large baseball stadium for Major League Ball.
Right.
Again, this is another venue where you can host these large scale events. Again, there's only so many people, there's only so many dollars, right?
Right,
Like
right.
I don't know how they can continue to build these types of venues.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's, I didn't even think of it that way, but as someone who's creative, not obviously musically talented and stuff, but if I'm going into a place like that, I would want to use it to, the full breadth of what it can do. And I would feel a bit almost like, how am I even going to use the space in a way that's going to give my fans kind of the show that they deserve? Because I've asked them to come out here, probably pay a high price because it's a unique venue. Who's capable of putting on a show like that? I think there's probably electronic artists that would be up to that task, but they're not going to pull in the 15,000s. So it's I don't know. It's interesting.
Everything that I've read about this MSG Sphere is incredible. I mean,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
the from what I understand, the inside, the LED wall that they're building for artists to use as projection screen is incredible. There's thousands of speakers inside the actual venue, so that every guest inside the venue is going to be hearing in surround sound and
That's
hearing
cool.
it. I mean, it does sound amazing, but again, you bring up another great point. Who are you going to put in there?
Mm-hmm.
There's only certain artists that I think are really going to be able to create the proper experience to utilize the space. And also, again, you're going to run into that situation of you're going to have to be able to charge a lot of money
Yeah. Yeah.
to bring people into a venue like that.
Yeah, it'd be really cool to see who's up to the task for that. I mean, there are artists out there that can do it. And we could probably, if we had time, sit down and write a litany of artists that are popular enough and creative enough to do something. So it'll be really cool to follow.
Let's talk a little bit about food, because this has been an interesting thing that I've seen come up in the last couple of weeks. Particularly, there's been some articles I've read in Eater Vegas and in the Review Journal about food halls and food courts.
Yeah.
Um, this has been a thing, and I noticed it a little bit before COVID and the shutdowns, and when they decided to close down all the buffets because you were going to catch the Rona if you were standing in line for your omelet or trying to get your crab's legs or whatever. Now this seems to be the direction that all these properties are going. I mean, we're looking at tons of food halls that have opened up. I mean, Cosmo opened up their food hall at Block 16 a couple of years ago, but Aria just opened up a brand new food hall. Resorts World has it's not even, I mean, it's kind of a food court, but not really. It is sort of more of a food hall. Park MGM had Italy a few years ago. Now Stations is doing this new one at the Durango. I mean, thoughts on the rise of the food hall?
I love it. I actually just wrote about it today. I knew we were having this conversation. It'd been on my mind. So like, let me put something out because I need to kind of gather my thoughts on it. But one, I will say I was completely wrong about Italy at Park MGM. And the main reason I was wrong is because we have an Italy in Chicago and I live in the Chicagoland area where my wife and I go there as much as we can. We love it. They've got a couple of really good restaurants in there. But in Chicago, it's like half. The top floor is half restaurants, half kind of, shopping center, if you will, where you can get, wine and all your Italian accoutrement, if you will, olive oil, all that stuff. And the bottom half is pretty much the same. So I'm like, and I think they started Eataly at Park with that kind of idea where you can come in, do some like almost like faux grocery shopping. You go grab some small bites and leave. I'm like, I don't know if that's going to work, but they seem to have transitioned into kind of a more food hall experience. That term is very fluid. Everyone kind of uses it differently, but I like what they've done with the Eataly at Park MGM. I think it fits perfectly in there. I actually am welcoming the food hall experience, if you will. I'm not a buffet guy. I know the casinos don't like operating the buffets logistically. It's just not a good time for them. In the past, decades prior, it was one of those loss leaders, right? We'll have this buffet, we'll get the people in here, they'll go gamble, whatever. But since then, in the last 15 years or so, they became quite pricey, and it was hard to find a sub $50 buffet, if you will, on the strip. But for me, it's someone who at times, especially during like lunchtime as a gambler, I like just going in and grabbing a quick bite and then going back out to eat. And better still, with some of these places, like we're not talking about like Sparrow or Nathan's Hot Dogs, which is what you would find at like the Luxor, Excalibur, or any of these other places. This is like good food. I love the one at Resorts World. Like I think it's called Famous Foods. I had an experience just on this recent trip where I was having some drinks at the bar, playing video poker, got hungry. I mean, it was less than 15 minutes for me to go leave the video poker bar, grab a bite to eat, get back and play a different game. And I ended up getting a hand pay after that. So now I'm really attached to them. Like they got me there quick enough. So my timing was perfect and I hit the hand pay. But that's neither here nor there. But I think for me, it works really well. I ate at Eataly twice for lunch on this recent trip. Eataly is a bit pricier than kind of more standard food halls, but they've got a good selection. And I think for gamblers, if you just want to go get something quick and you're not even leaving the casino floor, it's a fantastic option.
Eataly stresses me out. I don't know.
There's a lot of people in there.
It's a lot of people. It just feels like a lot of chaos. It's a lot of choice. It's like, I don't know if I want to buy a steak or I want to buy a slice of pizza or a sandwich or a bottle of wine. I don't know what.
And all their employees are like walking around. I'm like, I feel like the kitchens for Eataly, like they're not in the same, like the kitchen for one restaurant's actually serving another restaurant. Like I feel like they do it on purpose because they're just walking around with food everywhere.
Yeah. I just
got to dodge them.
It stresses me out. I don't know. It's just a high anxiety situation, but I was a big fan of Block 16 at Cosmo. When my wife and I stayed there a couple of years ago or a year ago, whatever it was, it was super convenient for us. It was so handy. Yeah. There were a couple of nights when we had shows, we were going out, we were going to see friends or going out, whatever. We just wanted something quick. All right, she's going to get ready up in the room. I'm going to run downstairs to the food hall and grab us sandwiches and fries or whatever. Right. Or every morning, even for breakfast, it was very convenient to just be able to take the elevator down, run in. They got a fantastic donut shop there that in there that does amazing handcrafted donuts. And so we were able to grab a donut or a cinnamon bun and a coffee and a tea and have that for breakfast without having to leave the property every morning for breakfast. And you're right about buffets. I mean, pricey. Holy hell. I several years ago, my wife and I did Bacchanal buffet at Caesars. And the only reason we did it was because I was diamond at Caesars at the time and I had the $100 celebration dinner credit. Yeah. And so at that time, Bacchanal buffet was like $50 a person. So I was only out a few bucks, basically the tip and a bit of extra cash. Right. But now Bacchanal's what, $85 a person for dinner? Yeah. Oh my God, no. I would way rather go to a nice sit-down restaurant. If I'm spending $85 a person, I'd way rather go to a nice restaurant and sit down and have a meal for $85 than be getting up and serving myself and trying to eat $85 worth of crab legs, which seems that's what everybody else wants to do when they're at these buffets. So I see it from both sides. As you say, I mean, the buffet for a long time was a big loss leader for the casinos. And now they're not even interested in buffets at all. I think Bacchanal's still there. Wicked Spoon is there. There's not a lot of buffets left on the Vegas Strip.
No, and I think they're keen to just get some vendors in there and let these vendors kind of handle all the the day-to-day of those things. And like I said, for me, who likes to find a cheap way to stay at luxury hotels, that was one of the big arguments or kind of my big complaints at some luxury hotels that they do not have any fast casual dining at some of these hotels. Bellagio has one. It's called like Quick Bites or something. It's way in the corner and it's inconvenient and it's quite frankly not very good. It's what you would think a standard food court meal would be. And I think that's the counter argument I've been hearing a lot lately is I've got a food court at home or my mall has a food court. Completely fair point. But to me, this is not standard food court dining. The places at Resorts World, for instance, are fantastic. I think, like I said, at Italy, yeah, it's pricey, but it typically gets set pretty quickly, and it's quality food, and I mean that sincerely. Like they're really good meals, and you can have a quick light lunch and get right back out on the gaming table. Proper Eats at Aria, you got to go up kind of their second floor level. It's not as convenient as the others. They just don't have the space for it. But again, multiple vendors in there. It seems like they're doing some good quality stuff for half the price or less than half the price of what you get at a buffet. But again, I don't indulge. I'm not a buffet person, so this speaks more to me. But I do understand that people who love buffets are sad to see them go for sure.
I was never a buffet person, and I just when my wife and I went again to Bacchanal, and we just sat there and we were it was like every bit of gluttony and greed and just like the person behind us had, and again I keep going back to the crab legs, but I know that's the first thing that everybody goes for when they go to the buffet is straight to the crab legs.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, one person that I kid you not had a 10-inch high pile of crab leg shells.
Right.
And I just sat there going, first of all, I love crab, but not that much. Number one.
Right.
Number two, it's a lot of work for very little meat.
Yeah, that's
That's not
true.
a thing for me. But again, it was not, I just couldn't fathom spending that much money on little portions of a bunch of different things. I would rather go to a nice steakhouse and have a $90 meal for myself than
Right.
go and sit in a buffet and have to be getting up and serving myself. And yeah, it's no, not for me, not for me
Yeah.
by any means.
Yeah, and I think the casinos are telling us it's just not worth it to them either at this point. But like you said, I mean, I think my big thing with buffets is that they have a lot of different options, more so than a food hall or food court would have, but none of it's better than what you're going to find at an individual vendor in one of these places, right? So if you have a vendor like I did this clay pot rice bowl at Resorts World, there was not going to be a place in that buffet that was going to do this kind of rice beef bowl as well as this person did. And like I said, I don't eat that much, so it was this is a much better option. It was, I think my meal was $20 with the bowl and a drink, so I welcome it.
This leads me rather to the next thing I wanted to chat with you about, which was Cheapskate Vegas.
Yeah.
The last time you and I chatted, you were still doing the travel fanboy thing a fair
Mm-hmm.
bit, and you were looking at launching Cheapskate Vegas. Cheapskate Vegas is now live. Tell me a little bit about the site and some of the stuff you're offering on there.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've changed names more than your radio station did at some point, but I'm following a very similar trajectory where I'm back to talking about Vegas. But this is kind of a rehash. So I used to do, people who haven't followed my transitions, I used to do Vegas Fanboy was a site, and it was all about kind of finding good, inexpensive options for people going to Las Vegas. And that's what Cheapskate Vegas is in the same name. I will say I'm not a cheapskate. I try not to be. I'm very much about value and kind of getting the most out of my money. However, best value Vegas doesn't really kind of roll off the tongue. So I might be betraying myself with the name a little bit. Only a handful of articles on the site right now where I'm still kind of building it up, but a lot of it's going to be about how can you have really cool experiences, even luxury experiences with not a lot of money, kind of helping people navigate that, whether it's through like credit card reward programs, tier status matching, kind of those kinds of things, or it's just finding some really good, inexpensive options that still exist. I think you brought up at the beginning of the show where it feels like the nickel and diming has taken hold, and that's very true in certain aspects. But there's also some places that you can get some great deals, some great cocktails, still at the quarter video poker level, if you will. There's some really cool, unique spots that you just kind of have to know about, and you can still have a great kind of upscale vacation on a modest budget.
Excellent. If people want to find the site, it is at cheapskatevegas.com, I assume.
That's it.
And it's on the social medias as well. People want to follow you. How do they do that?
They can follow me at Travel Fanboy. I'm mostly on Twitter, making people angry, or at Cheapskate Vegas. That's just me when I post links to the site and stuff like that. But yeah, if you want to see the show of me needling people, that's at Travel Fanboy.
Very entertaining, I must say.
Not for everybody.
Not for everybody, but it is for me. So,
and sometimes not for me either, where I do a little too much needling. I'm like, oh, I got to pull back a little bit.
nah, no such thing. Adam, thank you so much for taking time to jump on and have a chat. I really do appreciate it. And best of luck with everything. And hope to catch you in Vegas again soon.
Thanks. I always enjoy myself, and maybe next year we'll come back on and we'll be proven wrong about everything that we talked about. Hopefully everything opens up. Every place has artists, packing it to the brim, and I look forward to that conversation.